Sports Illustrated's baseball preview issue is out, and the magazine predicts a rematch in the National League wild card game with the Mets getting revenge on the Giants. New York would advance to face the defending world champion Cubbies in the NLDS, and Chicago advances past the Amazons in that round. The Dodgers get past the Cubs in the NLCS and then beat the Indians in the World Series. So again, it's the Dodgers over the Indians in the World Series, ending LA's title drought. So Nelson, what's your take on that prediction for the Mets?
It's plausible. I mean, everything about it, we think the Mets are going to be a team that can go deep into the playoffs this time. One-game playoff, as long as it's Bumgarner the pitch to get them into the playoffs, and that wild card game, then the Mets have a much better chance. We saw what he's been able to do throughout his career. So I think the Mets can get into any series against any team. They stand a very good chance. Going up against the Cubs, remember, the Cubs swept them 7 straight games during 2015, and then they went in and swept them when it mattered the most. I think you learn a lot about your opponent throughout the year, and then all of a sudden you're able to put those 5 starters together for a nice stretch run. The Mets definitely have the advantage there.
Yeah, you know what? I think they don't want to see Bumgarner again, but I think they're going to win the division. If we get out of spring training, the pitching stays healthy, I'm going to pick them to win the division. I think the Nationals, look, they're loaded again, and Bryce Harper's swinging the bat again offensively, but I think that trade, the Eaton trade, could come back to haunt them. That they don't have much pitching depth, and you know Strasburg's going to get hurt again. Ross had a shoulder problem last year. I think that will catch up with him. So I get the Mets to win the division. Then they get a series against either the Cubs, maybe, or the Dodgers, and then maybe their pitching is good enough to win it. You got to see. I mean, it really is. You hear a lot, but it really is. Once you get to that point, it's kind of a crapshoot.
I mean, the Cubs obviously won it all, but I mean, the Indians had them beat with a starter and a half almost. I understand the bullpen was lights out when Terry Francona could get to it, but if you line up again, if healthy, but if you line up 3 or 4 of those starters, isn't that enough to maybe overpower the Cubs in a short series?
Well, we saw it happen 2 years ago. I mean, I think the Cubs would be probably better prepared for it, a little more experience. But listen, if that pitching's dominant, but you got to see it. That's a long way to go. But if the Mets get there, nobody, I don't think, is going to be able to match them from start to finish in the starting rotation.
Yeah, good pitching always beats good hitting. We've seen it throughout the history of baseball. And when you talk about that Mets staff, they've been there before now. This is, the 3rd year that they'd be going into the playoffs. And every one of these guys has pitched in the playoffs in big situations. So now they're a little bit more comfortable with it. I think they're built a lot stronger up and down that lineup. The depth is a lot deeper than we've ever seen it before. So I think they have that confidence. They exude that confidence that, hey, you get us in, just get our foot in the door. We'll do the rest. I think they're all going to rise to that challenge.
It would help if the ball kept finding Schwarber in the outfield again like it did 2 years ago. But how about the Dodgers? They pick them to finally win it all again, end the drought since 1988. Do you think they're a legitimate title threat?
I tell you what, they spent enough money over the past few years. I mean, $325 million, with 120 of it wasn't even on their own team at the time. So you got to remember that the Mets have been talking about this thing about continuity and having the same guys showing up to camp, and it's almost basically the same team. The Dodgers have done that for now 3 years straight. They kept major pieces when they signed back Jensen. They signed back Turner. They signed back Turner, and now all of a sudden you're looking at that continuity of them having that swagger, that not worrying about so much the outside things, worrying about what they know that they can take care of business, and then it relies all on health. We saw their pitching staff get decimated down that second half, and when you lose a Kershaw up at the top, when he's that guy, he's the one horse that you look to really follow all the way to the playoffs. That was the biggest blow to them, and when he came back, he pitched like a man on a mission, even going into the bullpen in the playoffs. That's something that normally those guys don't do. Those aces won't do it.
Yeah.
But if you want to win a championship, you know that you have to do it, and now I think some people are now starting to believe that he can do it.
But can he do it? I mean, to me, watching that last year when he came out of the bullpen and to beat the Nationals, I thought this is the year he's taking them all the way. And he did pitch well against the Cubs his first start, but then he blew it up early in the sixth game against the Cubs. So is he ever going to get over that hump? I mean, he's got this. It's got to be a little bit riding on his back now, that kind of monkey on his back. Get to the postseason, he's going to have to get him there because their pitching is good behind him, but they don't have even a Greinke in the number 2 spot.
So you think you get him out in the WBC as well, or you wouldn't take Kershaw on your team?
All right.
No, that's a whole separate question.
That's on WBC Talk Live,
Nelson.
That's coming up later tonight. Now, keep in mind, back in 2009, Sports Illustrated did pick the Mets to win it all, and, well, that team finished 22 games under 500. But just throwing that out there.